Hello everyone and welcome back. Today's video is about 3 true love horror stories that are not only heartbreaking but will haunt your dreams tonight. Today I am sharing again my creative process for today's thumbnail. As always, this drawing is available as a print in my shop along with other prints. You can find the link in the description. But for now guys, grab your flashlight and follow me into the darkness. They say that my house is haunted. I haven't been living here for very long, but I know better that it isn't. That doesn't mean that kids, urban explorers, and ghost chasers don't still show up to investigate. Most of the time, they're surprised to see someone is now living in this house outside of town. Usually, especially with the more respectful ones, they apologize and ask if I've been witness to anything strange or paranormal. When I tell them that no, nothing strange happens, there is no ghost haunting the grounds, it's all just a fiction, they thank me and leave. On a handful of occasions, the bolder ones ask to see the inside. Depending on my mood, I've allowed it more often than not, assuming that once they see the furnished inside and nothing happens, they will spread the word and I can be left alone in the end. There was only 2 that caught me on a bad day, which resulted in me yelling at them for wasting their time and mine, and that I just want to live out the rest of my days in peace. So far, all of this has seemed to help me, although I am not sure if the anger has aided me more. Visits dwindled over the past year that I have lived here, and I haven't seen any thrill-seeking lurker on my property for a good 3 or 4 months. I still get odd looks when I go into town and hear the whispered conversations that they don't try hard enough to hide. The recent lack of strangers showing up is part of the reason I was mildly surprised a group of college-aged kids creeping towards the front door last night. I was walking from the kitchen into the living room. At first, I shook my head to myself, cursing adventurous young adults and teens for trying to scare themselves. If only they knew the true horrors in the world, then they might be less inclined to search for something that would make their hearts race. The flash of a memory burned briefly in my mind, and my frown turned into a small smile as I recalled how adventurous and ambitious I was once upon a time. Why not have a little fun with these youngsters then? There is no ghost here, might as well give them all a little bit of a scare. Quietly stepped to my front door and slide the lock out of place without making a sound. I didn't want to alert the outsiders to my presence just yet. I listened intently and waited as they neared the porch. I heard the wooden planks creak under the weight and talking about how it was too dark to see inside the windows. When I heard them, I twisted the handle and yanked the door open as fast as I could, while bellowing out, "What do you want?" I saw that there were 4 of them, 3 boys and a girl. I kept my smirk to myself as I mused for a second about the girl probably either trying to prove herself as one of the guys or being dragged alone, pressured by one or all of them. My mind quickly dropped that train of thought when 3 of the figures leaped from the porch and took a few hurried steps into the yard, putting some distance between themselves and what frightened them. Only one remained standing before me, the girl, her head raised in brave determination. "Sorry, sir, we didn't think anyone lived here." She spoke in a hesitant tone that grew stronger with each word. "Well, someone does live here," I responded carefully. The girl didn't answer, only stared at me, so I asked her, "Well?" "Penny, let's go!" One of the young men yelled after her. "Is your house really haunted?" she asked, ignoring her friend. "Penny, is it?" "No, the house is not haunted," I answered. "It's short for Penelope. Did you know that your house is believed to be haunted?" She continued. "Yes, Penelope, I did know that. Most of the brave kids such as you and your friends have discovered that already and made the conscious decision to leave me alone," I said. "I'm from out of town, so I guess I missed that memo," she responded. It sounded like it was accompanied with a smirk, but without any lights on her face, it was impossible for me to see it. "You are quite braver than your friends, it would seem. Would you care to come in for a cup of tea and a story? From my experience, not many know the full legend of the ghost that was assumed to haunt these walls. Of course, you probably won't believe the real story," I offered. Her silence told me that she was considering the offer. If she was smart enough, she would know that she shouldn't enter the house of a strange man. But then again, I knew better that many others and sometimes pride and curiosity can burn brighter than intelligence. I saw her silhouette turn as she yelled over her shoulder, "You go ahead, I'll catch up later." "Are you fucking kidding me, Penny? What if he kills you or something?" A male voice called back to her. It was a different one than the first I had heard. "Are you planning on killing me, or torturing me, or raping me or something?" Penelope asked, turning back to me. "I don't go around torturing and raping young women. How barbaric," I answered her. "I think I can handle myself," she hollered back to her friends. I stepped aside so she could enter the house. Once she was inside, she turned and waved to her friends. As I shut the door, I saw them shaking their heads, shrugging, and walking away. "Tea or coffee?" I asked my new guest as I locked the door and began walking to the kitchen. "I'd prefer coffee, if it's not trouble," she answered, following me. I led her into the modest room and flipped the light switch before gesturing for her to take a seat at a small table. She did, and I approached the counter, pulling a coffee maker towards me and fetching the grounds from the cupboard above. I scooped some of the dark granules into a filter, then I placed in the top of the maker. I filled the water and turned on the pot before taking a seat across from the young woman. I took a moment to study her. She had high cheekbones, but otherwise her features were soft. Brown hair fell to just past her shoulders, and her intense eyes, something not commonly found. "So, tell me, Penelope, what have you heard about this house?" I asked her as the machine on the counter began to heat up and make small gurgling noises. She shrugged. "Just that it's haunted. They say you can hear a woman crying loudly on some nights. They say it is heartbreaking." "And hearing a woman cry interests you?" She chuckled softly. "If it's coming from a ghost, sure. Anything for a glimpse of the other side." I mused aloud with a small smile. She shrugged. We sat in silence with the coffee finished making. I was surprised to note that she didn't look to be feeling as awkward as others in her situation might. Instead, she seemed rather calm and content. Within minutes, the mechanical pot stopped making gurgling noises, and I stood to pour some into the mugs. I placed one in front of her along with two small pots, one containing sugar and the other holding cream. I seated myself in a worn leather armchair. For as much as the dark fabric had been through, it still held itself together and supported my weight perfectly. I took a long sip of my own steaming black coffee, while Penelope took her place in another chair beside mine. Both chairs faced a fireplace that hadn't seen flames in a very long time. It was still comforting for me to be able to see the bricks that gave way to a dark and dirty space. Both chairs were angled so that the fireplace was easily the main focal point, but the inhabitants could also comfortably turn to see each other. I glanced at the young woman before reaching to the table between us and turning on the small lamp. It cast shadows about the room that would typically bring fearful thoughts to anyone. The woman wasn't typical, though. She was strong and unafraid. "Why do you think the woman would cry?" I asked my guest before beginning the story. She thought for a minute while sipping the hot liquid, then responded, "I'm sure everyone has their own theories. but I would assume that she lost someone dear to her, maybe a kid or a husband or something. Ah, yes. Loss is a terrible thing. Losing someone of great importance to you can cause us sorrow and hurts unlike any imaginable torture. The pain of the heart is too much more potent than the pain of the body, I said, losing myself for a moment in thoughts of the one I had lost so long ago. Heartbreak and misfortune were no foreign to me. Instead, they had taken up residence in my soul and refused to leave. So did she? Penelope's voice brought me back to the present. I looked up to her from my blank stare pointed at the floor. Yes, this house saw a woman lose everything, including herself. There was no child, though. What do you mean, she lost herself? She asked. For that to be answered, I must tell you the story itself. But first, one more question. What do you know about werewolves? One edge of my mouth curled up into a half smile, and as I looked at her over my cup before taking another drink, werewolves? They're humans that turn into a wolf with a full moon. Legends of them are found in various regions of the world. What if they were more than just a legend or a myth? Yes, depending on where you are in the world, there are different ways one might become a wolf. Who's to say what's the full truth or not? For the sake of this tale, though, I ask that you believe they are real and accept the information I give you without comment. I spoke. Okay. She nodded slowly and trailed off. Then, let me begin. Almost 2 long decades ago, there was a young man who lived far away from here. He was 18, stubborn, but mostly importantly, he was in love. The young lady his heart belonged to was beautiful, with long dark hair and bright eyes. Her name was Evangeline, and she loved him too. Her family kept a secret though, and because of this, they didn't approve of the young couple's dreams to travel. Evangeline knew this, and although she dreamed with him of distant places, her heart was always heavy with the thought she would never be allowed to join his adventures. One day, she finally shared her secret with him, and explained why she could not leave her home, like they were constantly imagining. The sweet angelic girl became a wolf during the full moon, every month. Unlike either breeds of the beast, she was not bitten or turned by choice. She was born into it. She explained to her love that there were different types of werewolves, some being made into what they were, and others, like herself, being cursed from their family's blood. For generations her family was careful to keep their secret from being exposed to the public. In an attempt to avoid becoming dangerous, they long ago decided to forget all the ancient traditions of feasting a human flesh. They learned that if they formed the diet to mostly be vegetable, they could better control their wolf side when it emerged. This aided them in being sure that they only hunted animals when near the wolf form. Over the years, there had been some mistakes, and if a wolf had the taste of human blood, they would become ravenous for it. A few times, the family had to put one of their own down because of this. As a result, her father was strict and wanted to keep her close until he died. He was afraid, terrified, that something might happen to his beautiful daughter. When Evangeline explained this to the young man, tears rolled down her face. She cried for what she was, for what she has no control over. She cried with the knowledge that the man would most likely leave her, whether he believed what she said or not. He had no reason not to believe her, and although skeptical, he held her close and kissed her head. The next full moon, he was allowed to be there when she changed. Unlike most tales, her family adored the young man and approved of their relationship, just not of their wanting to leave. Months went by, and he stayed true to her. She fell deeper into their love than she ever thought was possible. The night of her 18th birthday, he proposed and she said yes. The wedding plans were hollow, while their families were excitedly helping them choose flowers and food. The couple was secretly planning to run away together. They loved each other with the depth of the deepest charm, and Evangeline knew that her husband would keep her safe. One night, her window was light open without a sound. Evangeline looked out and saw the lover of her life waiting there. She carefully and quietly gathered the bag she had packed and hidden under the bed, then climbed through the window. They stole away into the night, across the grounds of her family's home, down a side street, and then out of town in his car. Life on the run was thrilling at first. They covered their tracks and used fake names while making their way to their coastal destination. Often, she missed her family and wished there was a way to be there when her pregnant mother gave birth to her little sister. In those moments, her lover would gently squeeze her hand or pull her close, and with a deep breath of him, she would relax and remember that it had to be this way if they were to live their life together. She didn't just run away to be with him after all. She ran away to be free. For a year, they took their time crossing the country. They were in no rush to get to the coast and spent most of the time in different towns and seeing everything's wonders that they could. Before reaching their destination, they wanted to behold all the beauty on the way. Then, they would continue to do the same across the world. Greece, France, Egypt, China, South Africa, India, Iceland, and everywhere in between would be their home. Sadly, they didn't make it very far. I paused my story to look at Penelope between sips of her coffee. I could see that she was engrossed, and when I stopped, her eyes widened. "How far did they make it?" she asked, urging me to continue. I smiled and drained my mug before setting it on the table. They stopped at a small town, planning on saving up some money for a couple of months to be able to afford the cost of boat fare. They weren't to the coast just yet. They went to the courthouse with a kind older couple they were renting a home from as their witnesses. They stayed longer than expected. Perhaps it was being stationary for so long, or maybe Evangeline's feeling of homesickness or the loss of excitement in their freedom, but they began arguing on almost weekly basis. She missed her family, and in the year they had been gone, her sister had been born, and she had never been able to even lay eyes on her. After a particularly nasty bout, the young husband spent an evening at a local bar. While intoxicated, he ended up getting into a fight with a local man. They both kicked out of the establishment, and after punching the man hard enough to lay him on his back, he left to return home. Evangeline threw her arms around him when he walked into the door, and they apologized to one another. He hadn't even been gone that long from her, and her anger had subsided to worry, causing her to realize that she loved this man and was more afraid of losing him than fighting with him. They talked into the night and agreed to make a trip back to their hometown before leaving the country. They hoped that the time spent away would be proof to Evangeline's family that she could handle being gone and that she was okay. The night of the full moon, though, brought trouble. That was the night when the man from the bar chose to appear on their doorstep, friends in tow, looking for revenge. What they didn't expect was to be interrupted by a wolf emerging from the trees while they dragged the man out of his home into an attempt to beat him. The wolf lunged and bared her teeth, growling and snarling for them to leave. In human form, she would have been able to easily keep herself in line, but as a wolf, her emotions raged, and she attacked the threat of her love. Wolves don't think like people do, and in that moment she was only concerned with saving her husband. Truly, she didn't expect to cause more harm than a scare, but in the end, 3 men lay in the grass, bloody and torn, while the wolf swallowed blood and flesh. The young couple disappeared after that. They couldn't return to their families, and they couldn't stay in that town any longer. They knew that. The thought of killing his beloved was unbearable, so they made a plan to keep her chained and locked up during the dangerous wolf nights. They swore to each other that they would do anything to protect one another. What Evangeline did not know was that not only a wolf has a change in appetite, but also the person changes. Over the course of several months, she became harsh and cold. She was no longer the same loving and warm woman she had once been. If asked, she might not even have been able to explain why she was still with this man, when her love for him had died that night with the man she killed. Her husband, though, felt responsible for keeping her safe. It became more and more apparent that she was hungry for the unspeakable, and after a while she was able to convince him that she could be allowed to roam free as a wolf. He didn't trust her at first, but when there were no reports of animal attacks on nights that she was gone, he began to believe that maybe she did have some sort of control. She did have some sort of control, yes, but only to the extent that she would stalk a victim as a human, and then as a wolf she would kill them. By stalking them during the days, she was able to keep her mind trained. After being on the run for almost another full year, they came across an abandoned house outside of a large city. The man was tired and heartbroken, having found out of the truth of her hands long ago. They agreed to stay put in that house and even fixed up the basement to it might contain her. As they worked together to create a livable home, they started to fall in love with each other again. Hope was once again found in his eyes, and there were moments where she looked at him as if she loved him again. Perhaps she did still love him in some way. Finally, the day came that she wrapped her arms around him. She hadn't done it in such a long time. She looked deep into his eyes and told him that she loved him too. For 3 months after, everything seemed right in the world once more. He stopped dreading her skills and even helped her pick out places where she could find prey. They agreed it would be only people who wouldn't be missed or noticed, but also held some sort of evil in their hearts. Evangeline tried to stick to their code, but it proved difficult for her. Living on the edge of a city brought too many temptations, and her hunger continued to grow. Disappearances began being reported, and grisly murders were being discovered. Body parts torn up in odd places, and it began to be suspected that a serial killer was on the loose. And with each morning, the guilt grew and weighed heavily on her heart and mind. One kill was no longer enough for a month. She had progressed to killing 3 or 4 in a single night. Realizing the dangers of her roaming free, they began chaining her in the basement on nights she would turn. They even furnished the room with a comfortable bed that she would take on it, not feel like a prisoner in their own home. It worked for 2 months, but in the 3rd month, she was able to break the chains and escaped to haunt the streets of the city. Evangeline's husband heard the crash of the window breaking and rushed to follow the wolf. Armed with more chains, and if need be, a large silver knife to protect himself from the woman he loved, he found her over the still twitching body of a teenager. The dart left the gun and a small sound. The wolf's ear shifted with the noise, and she turned to face her human lover. In a flash, the dart lodged itself into her chest while she pounced on the new threat. He threw an arm in front of his face as he was knocked on the ground, while on his back, her forearm lodged in the beast's mouth. He struggled to grip 2 more darts in his free hand. The darts fell away, and as the wolf began to yank his arm from its socket, he grabbed the only thing he knew could save him, the silver blade. The knife pressed through the fur and skin easier than he thought it would. The jaws of the wolf loosened as it stepped back, staggering on his feet. With a whimper, the animal locked eyes with him and fell to her side. They were no longer the eyes of a wolf, but rather the bright eyes of the woman he loved. He quickly stood and touched the wolf as her eyes closed. She wasn't dead, but he knew that it wouldn't be long before she was. He struggled much but managed to bring the wolf back to their home and into the basement. The sun was rising as her eyes opened again and she took a deep breath. It destroyed him to see her naked form lying on the floor, knife still in her chest. She tried to get up, but was weak from blood loss. With one arm, he helped her the best he could, and soon she was lying on the bed. Through a short tear-soaked conversation, she told him this was necessary. She thanked him for loving her and said how she was glad he was the one to do this. She guided his hand around the knife and told him that he needed to sink it deeper into the chest. To be sure, her heart was pierced through it in order for the wolf to die with her. He begged her not to make him do this. He pleaded with her not to leave him. In the end, though, he looked into her eyes one last time as his hand, still covered by hers, was pushed into her body. I stopped speaking and focused my gaze on the empty fireplace. This story always broke my heart. That was this house, wasn't it? Penelope asked after a moment of silence. Her speech was quiet and sad, heavily affected by the tale. I cleared my throat and looked at her again. Yes, it was this house. The bed in the basement is still even there. But there is no ghost. Evangeline did not return from the grave. Can I see it? She asked me. My eyes narrowed and I felt myself harden, slightly taken aback by the request. After holding my breath for 3 seconds, I let out a sigh and nodded. I suppose so. Follow me and I'll finish my story while we walk, I said, standing up. Finish the story? But she died, Penelope said, while following me. Yes, but the man lived, I answered, and began leading her through the hall and to the door at the end of the house that opened to a staircase down. He was bitten by one who was. It didn't take but a month for him to understand what that meant, and once he turned the first time, he knew how much of a curse it really was. His body snapped and bent, bones broke and moved. He felt like he was dying. When it was done, though, he felt the freedom of running. So that's what he did. He ran. As a human and as a wolf, he ran through cities and towns. He crossed rivers and oceans, countries and continents. He hated what he was, but he used it to his advantage. You see, Penelope, a wolf has an excellent sense of smell, and werewolves have their own sort of scent. One werewolf can sniff out another easily, and there seems to be a sort of a sense, even when in a human form. Very few things on the planet can mask the sense or the specific scent of a fellow wolf. He taught himself the ways of tracking and hunting. He vowed that he would spend his life making up the mistakes he had made with Evangeline. He allowed her to kill humans, to roam free, to tear apart families. He blamed the wolf in her and the wolf in himself for everything that had done wrong. So he herded them. He turned his curse into a tool and he traveled the world, searching out and destroying any werewolf he could find. The work took a toll on him, though. He couldn't enjoy traveling the world without Evangeline, and finally he decided to return to his home country, tired, weathered, and ready to disappear. We reached the bottom of the stairs, and I turned on the light. With the illumination of the room, a closed door could be seen on the opposite wall. I stopped halfway to it when I realized that Penelope's footsteps were no longer behind me. I turned to face her and saw fire in her eyes. And what about Evangeline's family? What about that baby sister? Did the man ever tell them what happened? She asked through gritted teeth. Her hands were at her sides, one in a fist and one gripping a pistol. I remained calm as I answered with a sorrowful tone. No, Penelope. I never saw or spoke to her family again. And why not? Didn't we deserve to have the truth? Did you know that my father spent years looking for her, only to find out that she was dead? Did it even cross your mind about how her little sister would grow up hearing stories on a sibling she would never get to meet? A sibling that was stolen from her. How hard do you think I had to fight for my own freedom? And what about her body? Did you even bury her? She demanded. I sighed and gestured to the door. Do you want to see her room? Penelope didn't answer, only glared and watched me cross the rest of the room. I opened the door and stepped inside. After a moment, she joined me and stood in the doorway. I watched her face twist and change. As she beheld the sight, I approached the bed and touched the corpse that still remained on it. You're so cold. I addressed the body. It was decayed, but still somehow intact. What the hell? I heard Penelope whisper from behind me. I came back when I heard that people claimed the house was haunted. I said aloud to my wife, You know, I want to hate you for everything that happened. You made me fall in love. You made me hope. You made me into the monster that I became. And then you left me. Tears welled up in my eyes and I knelt next to the bed. I hadn't been able to come back here since moving back. Seeing her body again after so long, I could no longer contain myself. I wanted there to be a ghost. I've begged for hours to hear her voice one more time. I've cried out and pleaded, but she never came. That's how I know that the house is not haunted. Oh, how I wish it was. That was the last thing I wanted in this world, I told Penelope without turning to even look at her. You don't deserve that, she said in a flat tone. No, I suppose you're right. I came back to die. I wanted a sign that she was still here so I could die in peace. But no. But lo and behold, I return and hear not only whispers of a ghost that doesn't exist, but also rumors of a wild animal on the loose. I couldn't say goodbye to this world with the knowledge that there was another wolf on the loose. So here I still am, at least for the moment. Did you really think you covered up your tracks that well? I asked her, finally looking into those eyes that were almost the exact replica of Evangeline's. She raised the pistol to be level with my head. Doesn't matter. You're not leaving this room. I jumped up and grabbed the knife that had been at home in a corpse for the past 19 years. The gun fired as I lunged at her. Her mistake was that I even wanted to survive past the hour. I didn't, but I would take her down with me. The pain hit me just as I shoved the blade into her heart. Her eyes widened as she dropped the gun and then fell in a heap. I let my own body fall and felt warm blood pool around me. I begged one last time to hear Evangeline's voice as I closed my eyes ready to die. She made a mistake though. Penelope didn't use silver bullets and she wasn't a good shot, even at such a short distance. The hole just below my shoulder healed quickly, the wolf in me ensuring survival. And now, a month later, I find myself writing this. Perhaps I feel the need to confess I've taken countless lives, and honestly, I don't regret the ones I've handed. The only death I wish I could have changed is that of Evangeline. I don't want you to worry though. If you bear this curse, I'm done with hunting, I'm done with killing, I'm tired, and although I have lived a short time, my life has been too long. I think it is time to say goodbye and use that silver knife one last time. For a year, I proved that there was no ghost in this house. For a year, I wandered my home, wishing there was, but never hearing her. I dream of her though, almost every night, and finally her voice has begun to whisper to me in my waking hours. She does not cry, and she does not tell me she loves me. She is angry, and I know that there will be no escaping her wrath now. I hope this is the right place to post this. If it's not, feel free to guide me in the right place. I'm a bit confused and honestly bewildered. Let me explain. My name is Steve. It's not my real name, but I believe in anonymity. I'm the manager of the restaurant that specializes in breakfast food. I work the night shift 5 days a week. The hours aren't bad, but it sure drags from time to time, especially during the week. The weekends, however, the place can be popping during the early morning hours. For example, 3 weeks ago, a group of teenagers entered the establishment visibly intoxicated and proceeded to order a massive amount of food. They were so drunk they picked fights with some of the other customers and I had to physically remove them. Great times. For the most part, however, things are tame. There is an elderly couple that comes in almost every night around 11:30. They don't say much. Actually, the wife never talks. The husband orders the same thing every time: pot roast with mashed potatoes and a tea. The wife never orders anything. Instead, she just sits there and watches the husband eat. I thought at first that she was just there to accompany the husband, but I started realizing just how strange the entire ordeal was. Every night at 11:30, they'd come in. The husband would tip his hat to me and I'd go ahead and just start the order of the pot roast with mashed potatoes. I'd bring his drink. He'd smile, take a sip, and just sit there staring at his wife. The head cook, who we call Dave, always had a theory that the wife was a prisoner or a slave and he was just out here showing her off to assert his dominance. Yes, Dave smokes a load of weed. It started to become routine for me every time I worked. They'd come in. I'd get the order and watch as the husband ate while his wife just stared at him. He always left a $20 tip, so it was easy money. The old man was nice. His name was Edwin, but his wife, as I said, never spoke. Every time I went to speak to her, Edwin would just stare at me as if I had no business to talk to his wife. That's the last time I'd ever tried to talk to her. As terrible as it sounds, I liked the $20 tip every night from the same guy. During the night shift as the manager, I also am the main waiter due to staffing cuts. As I've said, it can get pretty hectic, but the staff I have, we do a good job. I worked New Year's Eve night at the restaurant, and as I expected, it was a madhouse, drunken idiots galore. Upper management did not even schedule correctly, and it was just myself, Steph, and Dave. We tried our best to get the food out as fast as we could, but we had our limitations. Some customers left, some customers complained, but not Edwin. Edwin just sat there and waited patiently for his food. I brought out his food and drink, apologized profusely, and he just smiled and slipped me a $50 bill. He winked and nodded his head, telling me to take it. The rest of the night went better after the generosity of Edwin. Once things died down, I decided to take my 15-minute break and thank Edwin for his kindness, and normally introduce myself after all this time. Hello, sir. My name is Steve. I'm the night manager and waiter here. First of all, how was your food? Did it live up to your expectations? Yes, thank you. Delicious as always, my son. Great. I want to personally thank you for your generosity. That tip means a lot to me. Not a problem at all. I saw how busy you guys were and thought you deserved something nice for the new year. I just came over here to formally introduce myself, as I've seen you eat here almost every day. We've only talked once, I believe. Edwin, right? Yes, that is my name, Edwin James Stone. Well, Edwin, I said with a smile as I shook his hand, it's a pleasure to meet you. For a man pushing 80, his grip was surprisingly strong. So, sir, I've always wondered, what brings you here every night? Perhaps he didn't hear me, so I repeated, what brings you here every night? Edwin sat there, looked down at his empty plate, then back to me. It's a long story. I don't want to bore you." There was a quick pause. "My wife and I ate at this restaurant since the day it opened," he said after wiping his mouth with a napkin. "Every night we would come down here and enjoy the scenery and the food. Once my wife passed last year, I decided to come down here and continue the tradition. Sometimes I can feel her next to me." I didn't know what to do or say. I just stared at him. He got up and stared directly at me. "Did you know my wife, Catherine?" I was choked up. I somehow managed to shake my head as he patted me on my shoulder. Shame. She was such a beautiful woman. "Have a blessed day, Steve. I shall see you tomorrow." He went to walk away, but for some reason I stopped him. "Edwin?" "Yes?" I walked up to him. I'm so sorry for your loss." "It's quite all right, son," he said with a smile. "Thank you very much for your kind words and wonderful food. Tell your cook he does an amazing job." We shook hands as he and his wife left. I always look forward to seeing Edwin every night. I hope he knows she is still with him, wherever he goes. A friend of mine recently bought a second-hand laptop from a busy garage sale. The seller said that the thing won't turn on. Being the nerd that he is, my friend got it working and found a strange letter saved on it. He mailed it to me after I asked him if I could share it here. So here goes. "Dear Matthew, I'm writing to you to tell you that I know everything that you don't want me to know. I know you must dread hearing this, especially coming from me, but I really need you to listen to what I have to say. A few years ago, I watched you come home every night smelling of alcohol, with your eyes drooling out of their sockets. I waited for you, resolute to see you arrive safely. Yet, you never so much as muttered a quick greeting into my direction, and you always just went straight to your computer, where you started gaming sessions that persisted into early mornings, leaving me isolated in that bed that felt far too big for me alone. I watched you not care about your persona, and I understood it to an extent. Many articles online claim that people tend to let themselves go because they don't expect their partners to lose attraction. And we have been together for 13 years after all. A stomachache, your disgusting habits, and bad odor because I care for you. You tested my patience a few months ago when I watched you not come home. Until morning, I followed you sometimes, lurking outside the pubs. I watched you through the windows as you took the same seat in the dark corner every night and ordered one beer after the other until you passed out. Bartenders took pity on you, because for some reason they never once threw you out. And then, last month, I followed you again, expecting for your nightly routine to be the same. But it wasn't. There you sat at the bar, with your posture more confident than before, while you spoke to a beautiful woman seated next to you. Needless to say, you shattered my heart that night, and as I sat in the car outside, so many questions passed me. How could I have been so stupid as to let things go this far? Your attraction to me had become questionable, but how could I not think to do something about it? You were the person I was meant to spend forever with, but this betrayal made me certain that you were a mistake. I hated you after that, even though I never hated you directly. Through my bitterness, I made sure you had only freezing showers when you came home at night. I replaced your fresh sandwiches with rotten ones when I had the chance. I dumped half a liter of cat piss on your side of the bed, and I pulled the covers from your body every night. Then, the day came that changed everything. You woke up sober and dressed neatly, and this suspicious behavior had me trailing you once more as soon as you left the house. I watched from far as you bought nice flowers and what seemed to be a picnic basket. Of course, you were preparing to meet her, and that was something I didn't want to watch. But something made me follow you still. You took me by surprise as your journey led into the cemetery. I kept my distance as you paused near a grave for what seemed like hours. It took me a considerate amount of time to recognize the tears on your cheeks, 'cause I swear I had never seen you cry before. You left the flowers on the grave and walked away with the basket still in hand. I went home after that. I didn't need to see any more. I'm in the kitchen as I'm writing this on your laptop and you're in the bathroom. It's nearly 1:30, and that woman I saw you with at the bar is still sound asleep in our bed, but I understand it now. Matthew. Now I know why you're sobbing faintly in the bathroom and why my name stood on the gravestone. I understand, and I forgive you. You can stop grieving now and be with that stranger on my side of the bed with a clear mind. Just remember that I'll be near and watching over you, as I always had, for once your lifetime ends, you will belong to me again. The laptop has refused to turn on after I got this copy. Hey there, and thank you so much for listening. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. And if you like my videos and want to see more, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all